Chapter 4 Medicine, What the Bible Knew Before Medicine Did. The biblical statements about human health, disease, and anatomy are perhaps the most practically consequential area of scientific anticipation in Scripture, because getting these things wrong killed people. And for most of medical history, the medical establishment got them catastrophically wrong in ways the Bible did not. The blood. Leviticus 17 verse 11, "For the life of a creature is in the blood." This was written approximately 1400 BC. For the next 3,000 years, right through to the 19th century, the dominant medical theory about blood was almost exactly the opposite. Hippocrates, Galen, and the entire tradition of humoral medicine that dominated Western medicine for 2,000 years believed that blood was one of four humors, along with phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, that needed to be kept in balance. Illness was caused by an excess of blood. The treatment was bloodletting, removing blood to restore the balance. Bloodletting was practiced from ancient Greece through the Roman Empire, through medieval medicine, through the Renaissance, through the Enlightenment. It was standard medical practice in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. It was performed by surgeons, barbers, and physicians with lancets, leeches, and cupping glasses. And it killed people. George Washington, the first president of the United States, had a serious throat infection in December 1799. His doctors treated him with 4 rounds of bloodletting over 14 hours, removing approximately 3.75 liters of blood, almost 40% of his total blood volume. He died. Modern physicians believe that the bloodletting, not the infection, was the proximate cause of his death. The Bible had been saying for 3,000 years that the life of the creature is in the blood. Modern hematology has confirmed this with precise, molecular detail. The blood carries oxygen to every cell via hemoglobin. It carries nutrients, hormones, immune cells, clotting factors, and waste products. It is the transport infrastructure for every biochemical process that sustains life. Remove it, and life ends. This is not metaphor. This is physiology. And the Bible got it right when the best medical minds in the world were getting it catastrophically wrong. The 8th day. Genesis 17 verse 12, "For the generations to come every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcision." Why the 8th day? For most of history, this was understood as an arbitrary divine requirement, a sign of the covenant with no independent rational basis. Medical science has now identified the specific physiological reason why the 8th day is optimal. Vitamin K is essential for blood coagulation, the clotting that stops a wound from bleeding. A newborn baby is born with very low levels of vitamin K. It takes the intestinal bacteria that the baby acquires after birth approximately 5 to 7 days to begin producing vitamin K in significant quantities. By the 8th day, vitamin K levels have reached their working threshold. Additionally, prothrombin, a clotting protein whose levels are measured as a percentage of normal adult concentration, reaches 100% on the 8th day and never again at any subsequent point in the newborn period. The 8th day is, medically, the optimal day for any elective surgical procedure on a newborn. Before it, the risk of uncontrolled bleeding is elevated. After the first week, prothrombin levels begin to decline before stabilizing. The specification of the 8th day in Genesis 17 is medically precise. It was not understood medically until the 20th century. It was written approximately 4,000 years ago. Quarantine. Leviticus 13 contains 13 chapters of detailed instructions for the identification, isolation, and management of infectious skin diseases. The person with an infectious condition must be examined, must live outside the community, must cover their mouth, and must call out "unclean" to warn others of their approach. The infected person must remain isolated until the condition has completely resolved, at which point they must be re-examined before returning to the community. This is quarantine. Precisely, carefully, systematically described. 3,000 years before germ theory. 3,000 years before Louis Pasteur identified bacteria as the cause of infectious disease. 3,000 years before John Snow traced a cholera epidemic to a contaminated water pump in London in 1854. During the Black Death of 1347 to 1353, which killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population, Jewish communities had significantly lower mortality rates. Contemporaries attributed this to poisoning. They accused Jews of deliberately spreading the plague and used it as a pretext for massacres. Modern historians largely attribute the lower mortality to the Mosaic hygiene laws, quarantine practices, prohibition of contact with dead bodies without ritual washing, requirements to dispose of waste outside the camp, dietary laws that reduced exposure to common pathogen vectors. The biblical instructions that seemed merely ceremonial were, in fact, epidemiologically protective. And they protected people for thousands of years before anyone understood why they worked. Hand washing. Numbers 19 prescribes washing with running water, not standing water, after contact with a dead body or with certain infectious conditions. The distinction between running and standing water is medically significant and was not understood medically until the germ theory era. In 1847, Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician working in the Vienna General Hospital, noticed that women delivering babies in the ward staffed by medical students had a much higher rate of childbed fever than women in the ward staffed by midwives. The difference was that the medical students came directly from performing autopsies on cadavers to delivering babies, without washing their hands between the two activities. Semmelweis instituted hand washing with chlorinated lime solution and mortality in his ward dropped from 10% to 1%. He was ridiculed. His colleagues refused to accept that a gentleman physician's hands could be a source of disease. He was forced out of his position, suffered a mental breakdown, was committed to an asylum, and died at the age of 47, ironically from a septic wound that may have been caused by his own research. His vindication came after his death, when Pasteur's germ theory explained the mechanism that Semmelweis had empirically identified. The Bible had been prescribing hand washing with running water after contact with dead bodies for 3,000 years. The medical establishment resisted the idea as late as 1847. The Bible was right. The medical establishment was wrong.